Hey, we're Attention Trading, a full-service digital marketing agency that helps small and mid-sized businesses with their strategic marketing efforts. From websites, design, social media, and ads, our goal is to create marketing alignment for our clients. You may not realize it, but the majority of businesses lack a solid marketing strategy and plan. That's where we come in. On this show, we talk with business owners, founders, and marketers to uncover the secrets of their success when it comes to starting and scaling a business. This is the Attention Trading Podcast. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Attention Trading Podcast, where we talk with CEOs, owners, founders, and marketers about how they grow, scale, and operate their business. My name is Max Lowy. I'm here with my co-founder of Attention Trading, Steve Alves. Today, we're super excited to have Vinny, a client-focused corporate real estate broker with JLL in Princeton, New Jersey. Vinny has excelled in building strong, trust-based relationships with his clients, emphasizing integrity, respect, superior service, really specializing in acquisition and deposition of office space, leasing strategy, space planning, and corporate real estate investments. Vinny's expertise helps both tenants and landlords achieve their real estate ambitions and maximize success. Vinny, welcome to the Attention Trading Podcast.
Thank you for having me. That was a mouthful of an introduction, but I really appreciate it. You nailed it, by the way. Totally nailed it.
It was a lot of words that I don't typically say, so I appreciate that. It was a lot, but you know what? You do a lot. So I think it's important to give the listeners a little bit of background. And for that, I'd love for you to kind of kick it off. Tell us about you, tell us about yourself, and really what you do as a commercial broker.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for providing the platform. I've been watching what you guys have been putting out, and it's great stuff. That's why I reached out and said, hey, let's do something together. Let's find something interesting. And, corporate real estate, it truly is a interesting business line. Every single day is different. And, when you were going through that quick introduction, all kidding aside, I think most people listened to it and went, what? Just boil this down to the simplest of terms. And I tell people when I was 22, I graduated college, shook the president of the college's hand, got my diploma and went, what now? What comes next? And I was given this opportunity because someone that we knew was looking to hire a couple of, junior brokers who can just, pound the pavement, go knock on doors, go make cold calls. And I don't even want to tell you how long it was into this job before I really figured out, what is it? What is commercial real estate? What am I doing? Yeah. So as you said, I work with Jones Lang LaSalle. I'm a senior vice president, which doesn't mean anything. It's just a title. I don't really have any responsibilities outside of building the bottom line and working with my customers. But as a broker, I focus on the greater Princeton region, which is all of Mercer County, a large section of Middlesex. But JLL is 110,000 employees globally. So we have numerous offices throughout the state. So it doesn't matter where the requirement is. I can go anywhere, but also, again, anywhere throughout the country. I'm working on business right now in Milwaukee. I just closed something in Dallas and San Antonio. I'm in Philadelphia. So, nice. Wherever the opportunity is, I'll go there. And what I do is I find the best people for the job. So, I find the Vinny in that particular market because, you do need that attention to detail on a particular market. And then I'll, oversee how things go. So essentially that's for office using tenants for the most part. Tenants that lease office space, again, because some people might not really know what that means. And we do a lot of different things. But again, to boil it down to the simplest of terms, if you need to open an office and find office space, if you need to relocate an office, grow an office, shrink an office, or just simple lease renewals. People don't realize that we do that. Oftentimes, it's right over their heads. Like, I don't want to move. And I go, great, I'm not interested in moving you. It's actually a lot more work for me if I have to move you guys. There is strategy even on lease renewals. And oftentimes that means you have to go look at space and, kind of in a nice way, threaten your landlord that you're going to leave in order to get the best terms. So there's a lot of work and thoughtfulness that goes into the job, knowing the market, knowing the players. But I also represent landlords. And so I have listings. I have over 1 million feet of office space throughout the greater Princeton region, where my job is to not only fill vacant space, is to make sure that the existing tenant base stays in the building and they commit to longer term leases and market rates and things of that nature. So, guys, with that, there's so many different things that corporate real estate companies offer today. So it needs a 2-hour podcast, honestly, to talk
Yeah.
about all the different things, because we get into workplace strategy. You want to design your space for specific needs and specific teams and people, and what is the vibe that you want to create, how much space should everybody have. So we've built out technology, space programming tools that we can actually walk companies through, because they go, what do we need? It takes into account hybrid work, and it's a tool that we think we're the first to bring to market, and really our competition does not yet have. So we think we're ahead of the field on that, and that's really just one of the small differentiators. We have a JLL GPT. We have our own, AI that's learning from all the input that we're putting in there. So we do a lot of really cool things. And the day of finding space for somebody and negotiating a lease, as that's what a broker does, that's really a thing of the past. We have to do so many different things now. But again, it makes the job really exciting. So I don't know if I confused you guys or taught you something new there, but I'm going to stop and see what you have to say.
No, I think it's super interesting, because I think most of the time most people don't ever really even experience an interaction with a commercial real estate broker at any time. So it's definitely good to get some of that insight, not go into the weeds, but a good overview. And I think you did a really good job explaining that. One thing that I think is super interesting, and you kind of talked about like the details and the attention to detail. And personally, we know each other, and I know that you put a lot of attention to your clients.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I know about you is you are a Disney fanatic,
Oh,
right?
wow. How did you get that into the fold here? Oh,
So,
oh no.
well, you'll hear how my mind
Okay.
is working here, right?
Okay.
So, based off of just what you do on a regular basis and that experience that you want to bring to your clients, and based off of the experience that you get and you feel from Disney, from the movies, from the parks, from any piece of that when you go with your family, is there anything, because we bring up Disney a bunch actually in some of our episodes, just because of the type of company, the type of brand, and the type of experience that they're able to offer, uh, you know, is there anything that you pull or try to look at from a brand that you love that you
Mhm.
can kind of introduce into your business on a more regular basis?
Dude, thank you for asking the question, because some you get two different types of people. Some people that get it, and other people that think you're nuts for ever bringing up Disney in a conversation like this. And by the way, I'm on that former, right? I totally appreciate it. For me, didn't grow up as a Disney anything. Didn't go as a family. Thankful to have married somebody who's part of one of these Disney families and have learned a lot. But for me, yeah, like the movies and just the cultural icon like status of it all, I think is one part of like what most people are drawn to. You have the parks. I love the history. So Walt Disney, the businessman, the things that he went through, the failure that he faced, and the level of ambition and risk taking and just outside of the box thinking that he was able to implement is remarkable. And most people would never know unless you really did the research. So much of our lives, of things that we experience day to day, are in large part thanks to him. Whether it's the way that we view medium, whether it's the way that we've experience our hospitality. There are renowned architects that have designed universities and public spaces based off of the design of Disneyland, which was a first of its kind. And so when I go to the parks with my family, I'm so in awe of the level of innovation. And again, Disney's been gone for a long, long time, but what he, ingrained into that company remains. And I'm just like so driven to come back to work to bring that level of detail, not only from the hospitality side, like these are my customers. Like I love people saying, hey, make it a magical day, or really bending over backwards to give me an experience that I'm going to want to keep coming back to. And that for me is all that we need to do in this business to do, like just be successful, because God, this business is so damn hard. And so many businesses are. I don't ever want my clients waking up and having any reason whatsoever to think about another real estate broker. I want them to 100% of the time say, Vinny's my guy. So, people ask me, do you ever go to Universal? No, I don't. I know I need to. I know I hear lots of really great things, but I feel like I have such a great time down in Disney. I don't want to think about the other place. I don't need to, because they give me everything that I need, and it invigorates me on so many different levels.
Yeah.
Even the funny thing here is like Disney had a huge push when it came to real estate acquisition, and the amount of land he had to acquire to build Disney, and the way he kind of went about it. Not to make this about a Disney podcast, but I just happened to know this little fun snippet is that he would come up with all these shell companies. He'd have to start buying all the land around each other because he was too worried that someone would find out that he was buying all the land and then hike the price up.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
So even
It was like, it's like, 20, I forget now, 25, 26,000 acres. And it was like the last little piece that he needed. Some woman was interviewing him and kind of figured it out, obviously very late in the game. And he made a public, like, off the cuff announcement that, like, yeah, it was him buying up all this land. And to your point, Steve, the last acreage that he bought was like substantially more expensive than the first bits. But yeah, no, I mean, just everything they do, every little thing they do, they go down to the finest detail. And part of the reason, when you think about like the parks, Disney, the man knew that you needed something to draw people in, and they called it the weenie. And like the castle is the weenie. Everybody wants to go and they want to see that one thing. And while they're there, they're going to experience other things. And I think in real estate, it's a very commodity driven business where you're trying to lease office space. Okay, there's 25 million square feet of office space just in the greater Princeton region alone. So probably 10% of that space, it's outdated. No one's ever going to lease it. Okay. That's 2.5 million feet right there. You're going to have another 15% on top of that. So let's just say you're going to have, rounded up, 5 million feet of vacant space at any given time, based on where we are in the world. If I need 5,000 feet, oh my God, there's so many options, right? There's so many options for me to go look at. What's going to set one building apart from another? Because if my broker says, hey, I put a list together for you, and this is what happens, guys. I go, look, there's 25 buildings on this list. Let's quickly narrow that down to something that's a little bit more manageable. And even if we get down to 8, to spend a day looking at 8 properties can be exhausting. That's a lot. How are you going to remember the first building when you got into 8 and you've seen so much in between?
Yeah.
So these buildings, they need to have an attention grabbing aspect to it that's going to make people go, wow, this is where I really want to be. And we face, another challenge now that we never had before, which is that bringing people back to the office component to it, where you have the business owners that really prefer to have their people in. And some people, they describe it to me like, you're forcing these people to come back in. So if you're going to force them to come back in, there's got to be something there that they want to actually, be able to experience. So that's your struggle today, which is something that we never really needed. And that attention to detail as a broker, for the landlord to give that advice, that sound advice that says, here's what I'm seeing in the market. Here's what people want. Here's how you differentiate your building compared to others. Do I ever compare it to Disney? I don't, because I think my clients would go, what's up with this guy? But I would love it if they would, because I would get enthusiastic like I am now, because at the end of the day, it's about being passionate about office space, which people can think is like a relatively boring thing to focus on, but you can make it as exciting as you want.
Yeah, I think that piece of like what you just said, because it is kind of like that topic of, all right, we're just going to work, or most people just don't see it. So like if you can bring out, the detail of the architect and the design of it all. And, I've been in the relocation space where I'm working in these buildings, I'm working with architects, I'm working with planners, and it is exciting. It's like, oh my gosh, they're getting something like that. That is so cool. And, I think, like I love working remotely. I also understand and appreciate the importance of working in an office as well. But like anytime I go and see a space that I think they've done a really, really good job of, just the strategy around what they're doing for that space and the building and the people that are going to experience it. I honestly, every time I'm like, damn, I wish I had an office there. Right. And so I get it, but I think it's really important for, not just your clients, but just people in general to like, how do you get people excited about that? Right. How do you flip that switch on someone that isn't dealing with that on a regular basis? And that's probably most employees that are kind of giving that pushback of not wanting to go back to office. I know you're working with the landlords and you're working with, I guess, the business owners, but do you ever have that opportunity to kind of help, I guess, the business owners kind of put that plan together for their employees? Is that something that you guys do?
There's a lot of conversation behind the scenes. I wouldn't say I'm a part of a, hey, here's the business plan and how do you help us? But it always comes up as we're looking at space. And, again, they're the business owners. So what they want oftentimes is very different than what their workforce wants. But they'll say, we're having some trouble getting people back in. And here are the things that we think, we'll get them back in. And it just starts a really nice conversation about, maybe things like a shared conference center, a nice cafeteria, fitness center. These are all the things that they're not new, right? Like we saw this. So think about suburban office space, just to take this back a second. Most of it was built in the 1980s. So when I got into the business in 2009, we were coming up on this 25 year period where, a 20-year-old building is relatively new, but they started to feel outdated. So in those first few years of me being in the business, you saw a lot of new lobbies. That's what owners thought. Like, we got to redo the lobby and then we're going to get tons of people to come and lease space. And it helped to a certain extent. And then it started to evolve a little bit more. And we said, well, you know what? Maybe we need a cafeteria. Maybe we need a fitness center. And then that's kind of where it stayed until 2020. And now it's all about ESG, right? Companies have these ESG mandates, and we're like, how do we fit that mandate to show that we're environmentally, yes?
You got to define ESG for me.
Environmental and sustainability.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Governance.
We got to assume no one knows what we were talking about here.
Thank you. Well,
I don't.
I didn't want to have to force myself to remember the exact acronym, but I'm pretty sure I hit on it.
You nailed it there.
Thank you. Okay. Look, it's about wanting to be good for the world and being in a building and being in a space that's going to be green, essentially. And these companies have these mandates now that, whether a building needs to be like LEED silver, it just talks about how efficient the building is and whether or not it's good for the environment. So, having community gardens, having local honey, like literally having apiaries on site, beehives where you're producing your own honey. These are the kinds of things that it's actually interesting to people, because they're like, wow, it makes me feel good being here, knowing that you're doing good for the world. There are EV parking stations, solar parking, or just solar on site. So we get this sense like we're not only hitting the mandates that this company has, but also just in general doing good for the world. So we're seeing more and more of that. And then also like pickleball courts, like they're happening, right?
That's awesome.
Pickleball has taken over.
It's taken over the world.
I've actually still never played. Yeah. I was a tennis player, so like I think I would enjoy it, but
You'd be a natural.
I would be a natural. But that's interesting that some of these places are putting in pickleball courts just because if it's that popular, give the people what they want, I guess, right?
If that's going to help me get my people back into the space. Now, as a business owner, I'm not paying for it. It's an amenity to the building. So the landlord's got to make the investment. And, you might think, well, they're going to charge more rent. That's actually not the case. It's to help lease space faster. So look, I don't think we really carry these stats in the business, but most space is going to sit, even if it's good space, for 9 months, 12 months, 15 months. It just is. Again, there's too much space on the market. And when you have the process that you need to go through, like you get out, you tour, you look at space, and then you do some floor plans to see how do we make the space work for us. And then you go through this process of negotiating business terms, negotiating a lease, so on and so forth, all the way down to getting into that space. depending on the municipality that you're in, it could take 5 months just to get a permit.
Right.
Right. So you're like, holy crap, this space just became vacant. If I found a tenant today that expressed real interest in it, it may be 12 months until I have them in the space. And then it may be another 6 months until they're paying rent on it because of things like free rent. So yeah.
So I got a question, because like time is a big factor here, right?
Yeah.
So and with the advent of AI and generated content and all the things in the world getting faster and faster, how do you get that to be way shorter? Is it just something that's inevitable?
Yeah, it's inevitable because it oftentimes comes down to people's schedules. And look, I know you guys are working remote. I'm just gonna call it out. Okay. I know you are. So
No.
don't take any offense to anything that I say, please. But I think people that are working at home, it has slowed down the cycle of things, because you may put in 3 to 4 solid hours of work, God honest solid hours of work. Whereas if you were in the office for 9 hours, maybe you're BSing with people, taking breaks and just not getting as much done. That could be it. But I've sort of witnessed firsthand where like someone's logging off, early, and things are getting slotted for the next day when they could have gotten done today. And there's so many different steps in the process of leasing space that one day compounds to 2 days, which compounds to 4. And then you're like, oh my God, like we've lost 6 weeks on this project. How the hell did that happen? So, you're dealing with, there's the end user, the tenant who needs space. And oftentimes you have 2 or 3 stakeholders that are working on their behalf, plus their attorney. There's an architect, a contractor, their broker, the landlord's broker, the landlord's attorney, movers, right? Because now you're getting quotes for moving and electrical and like so many different components that if each and every person gets set back a day or two, we've now lost time. I don't think there's anything that can help us speed it up. There is technology now, like, just like visual aids for space to get people over the hump, to make them feel comfortable. That probably has truncated the process a little bit. But at the end of the day, it still really comes down to like this person to person interaction, feeding information that's going to get them comfortable, spitting out an analysis that's going to showcase the different options they have and which one's going to be, fiscally most responsible for them. So it just takes time. And then my favorite is when, there's 8 people on the email chain and hey, good morning. And then you're like, here's what I need. And everybody thinks everybody else is going to respond to it.
Right.
And a week goes by and you're like, how come I didn't hear from anybody? And you're like, oh, I know, now I got to call somebody out. So it takes a long time. And I'm glad you brought it up, Steve, because the benefit in this process, just putting my tenant hat on, because landlords know the business. They know how it works. They don't really need to be like educated because it's their day-to-day business. If you are a tenant, you're a pharmaceutical company. Your business is that pharmaceutical company. And every so often you have a real estate need and you're not necessarily thinking about it. So for me, my best advice is always time is your friend. You need plenty of time to leverage the market to get yourself the best deal. Because if it gets to a point where you've missed your notice period to renew your lease, now legally your landlord can lease that space to somebody else when the lease expires and you're going to be forced out. And if you waste too much time, the landlord knows there's not enough time for you to leave, and therefore you've lost all your leverage. So not that anybody's trying to screw anybody, but like we all want fair terms. Okay. Yeah. And so you have to do this early enough. And so many tenants are like, I make my call. Hey, it's Vinny, a cold call because you got to do it. And you're like, hey, I want to talk to you about this. I've got plenty of time. Call me 3 months before my lease expires. I'm like, what? Well, you're dead in the water, man. When does your lease expire? Oh, in a year. I'm like, you're late. You're actually late. We need to be doing this now.
Let me ask you about this, because I think we spend a lot of our time with our clients personally and doing a lot of education on things.
Yeah.
So like I spend so much time bringing people's knowledge from here to here in terms of marketing, right?
Yeah.
How much time are you guys spending like throughout your day just literally giving that edification piece to either your brokers or whomever?
The brokers know. I mean, we all need education, continued education. But the client base, if you're working with tenants, more often than not, they don't know these things. And it's no like diss to them. Like it's not their business line. And I've thankfully had so many people that have said, thank you for getting to me when you did, because once you get to the end of the process and you see the benefit of starting early, they're typically thankful. The process can be a bit daunting. So like another service that we have is, we call it PDS. It's like project development, but it's really project management. And unfortunately, so many times you see these companies that like take an admin, office manager, or somebody who's never, ever, ever been through a move or a renovation or anything. And now they're tasked with that. And then there's internal headbutting because one doesn't like the other way how they're doing it. And it's not worth it, even though it's free because they're not paying their people in-house to do it, but you're pulling their time from doing the things that they're most used to doing. You're better off hiring a project management team to oversee that move or that fit out, because oftentimes there's like preferred vending, and so they have better pricing for flooring and paint and materials, furniture, whatever, lighting, whatever the case might be. So whatever you pay for that project management service, you likely make it back on the savings through the overall project. And so that's an even harder thing to educate people on, because it's just too much. Like you're telling me about, I got to be out early looking at space. I got to do it, in this fashion. Like I'm also trying to run a business, and I go, by the way, so am I.
So let me ask you this. So then, like I'm kind of pointing this conversation in a specific direction for you personally in terms of content creation. Okay. So like, do you ever think there's an opportunity for you to be walking through a space and find something you're like, hey, like this would be a great piece of content for me to educate the public on, and you just literally pull your phone up and you're like, hey, like this is what's happening. This is the concern that's kind of happening. Here's how we would potentially solve this thing. And that produces more content for you without adding more time to your schedule to have to educate your public.
I need a Steve and a Max to help me do that stuff. I'm an independent contractor. So essentially, I'm 100% commission based with no base salary. And I can only do so much. And I work again for a massive company, but there's a lot of me's here, and we don't have nearly enough staff to help. Even though we're a phenomenal company, we're the second biggest in the world, and we're a $20 billion firm, like all those really great accolades and things. But it can be really hard to find the help to do the things that I would need for that content. So I kind of get in my own head about it. We're like, I just like the way you said, Steve, like, hey, here's a problem I'm seeing, and here's how I would solve it. I've never done that. I love the idea. I love the idea. Usually I'm just like, hey, here's a really great piece of space. We're working on the fit out, whatever. But people need to learn, like, well, what was the hurdle in getting there, And so I need way more time in the day. Max and I were talking about parenthood, and I've got 3 small kids, 8 to 3 at home, and I don't want to miss a beat with them. And so it can be really hard to find the time in the day to make the calls, to do the marketing, to service the client, to show the space, to network. I mean, God, there's so much to do.
So you've also mentioned the addition of junior brokers, right? Like, so there's some people like on the team who come in and they do a lot of the cold calling and the door knocking, that kind of stuff. Why don't you hire a junior broker and then literally teach them through this process, have them shadow you?
I wish it were that easy. Yes, that's in the business plan. That's something that I would like to do. It's a lot of behind the scenes. How do you getting approvals and who pays them and how much and how does
so you can personally just pay someone to shadow you?
Sure I could. That's how I came in the business, because it was 2009, and the person that I work with identified a need to hire a couple of junior people to it was the Great Recession. There was nothing going on. There was nothing happening. And wow, this would be a really great time to just get out, learn the business, knock on doors, make calls. And so I had a draw at the time. It was, it's 15, tomorrow is 15 years since I was hired. $20,000.
Time flies, man.
Time flies, but it was $20,000. Okay. My checks were $1,666.67 before. There were no taxes, nothing pulled out. And I remember calling my friends after that first check, being like, we're going out. Like drinks are on me. I've got so much money, right? And quickly that dwindles, and you realize in life it's not enough. And then I remember a few months in, like, because my only other jobs ever in my adolescence, you would get your paycheck. It was a W-2 or whatever, and the taxes would come out. I'm like, The guy says to me, so are you putting money aside for taxes? I go, what do you mean?
Right.
Oh man.
He goes, it doesn't come out of your check. I'm like, no, I had no idea. So I had to quickly scramble and figure things out. So there's such a learning curve in this business in so many different ways. But I will tell you this, if there's any junior brokers that happen to see the title to this or they're listening or whatever, I just quickly, if you don't mind, I want to touch upon how I personally found some success and longevity. Because in the 15 years, I have seen a very high number of people come into this business, give it a shot, and they're out. I mean, within a year or less. Okay. It's a very difficult business. And I didn't know what to do coming into the business. Thankfully, the person that hired me kind of gave us a roadmap. And that roadmap was a list of 320 buildings. He said, go foot canvas. Thankfully, I had somebody else who I happened to know. And every single day, we would get out and we would go canvas buildings. And we would go through that list probably 3 times a year for the first 3 years in the business. So that's several thousand buildings. That's 2,500 companies each time. So 7,500 companies in a year that I would foot canvas. I mean, think about the amount of information that you learn without even realizing it, right? So when you start to have a conversation with somebody about the market and you go, oh yeah, I know that building. Oh yeah, I know that space on the first floor and that company that's there. And oh yeah, you know what? That the lobby it is dated. It feels like it's the 85 building. You're like, wow, I'm all of a sudden speaking the language. Okay. And that comes through in just very clearly when you're talking to someone who doesn't know the market. So you have to become an expert in your craft. And then you got to get on the phone. You got to take all the names of the companies that you foot canvassed and you got to put them in a database and you got to call them and you got to say, hey, do you have any space needs? For me, I was not provided language. I was not provided, hey, here's your list of people you're going to call today. Nope. Those are the buildings. Go find the companies that you need to call, right? And then they give me language. I just decided one day I was going to wake up and pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm doing a survey, which was total BS. I wasn't doing a survey. I'm doing a survey to see how long you have left on your lease, how much space you lease, and how many people you have in that space. And that just gave me enough information to wait a week to call them back and go, hey, by the way, don't you have like 18 months left on your lease? Right. Oh, how do you know that? Because they never remember you called. Right?
Right. Yeah.
It is 100% not the business that is going to come to you. You have to go find it. And that's what we talked about, like finding maybe some, getting out of maybe just the real estate context of the conversation, but like business development. I find it fascinating. Trust me, I have days where I'm like, God, this business sucks. It's hard. It's hard, man. And the grass is not always greener on the other side. I have to remind myself of that all the time. But I can spend a year working on a project. I'm not exaggerating. A year, and it blows up, and nobody gets the benefit of it. I make no money. I've now put hundreds of hours, right? And a lot. If you're in sales or if you're an entrepreneur, that's going to happen. But the sooner you get your head wrapped around the concept of the risk reward in this type of business and the amount of time and effort you really need to put into it, the sooner you're going to find that success. Because again, if you think it's going to come to you, man, you go find something else to do.
Right. Man,
this is definitely not an industry that relies on dopamine hits. It's definitely a year long plus. Like we just had a birthday for a project. Like it literally has been going 14 months and we're like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And again, it's always the client. We're always just waiting.
Always waiting,
for us, we know what to do. We have our schedule. It's not us. It's
right.
And for you, I guess for your clients, I mean, and not to backtrack too much, but like there's just so many moving parts from all the different contractors and vendors, and something could go wrong. And when one thing goes wrong, like you said, it could push stuff back. So,
but it's also it's just the fact that there's a sequence of events. And I don't know, like I said, everybody's running their business as well. So you get a proposal, right? It comes in and you're like, okay, I'll read that over later. And I'm on the other side, like, read it now. Like, what are we waiting for? But they want to be thoughtful. They want to digest it. And I can't ever blame anybody for that. The hardest part for me, it's only ever happened to me a couple of times. And I think it's only fair to showcase, like, this isn't social media where you only see the glamorous side of things. Okay. There's a lot of bad, I shouldn't say bad, but things that happen that you really wish wouldn't. I can't say I've been fired or removed from an account many times in my career. I don't think this is the kind of business where you experience that very much, but there's been one or two times where like I had to gently push someone to make a decision because if they didn't, they were going to miss the opportunity. And unfortunately, and like I don't think I pushed all that hard, but some people just don't like to be pushed. And now I'm out. And I'm like, there was one guy, listen, 2 years I worked with him and I was super, super patient. I was very young in the business and, you know, he needed space. And the landlord says to me, Vin, if you don't get your guy to do something now, he's going to miss this opportunity. And I genuinely believed that they wanted this space. And, you know, these are the pains and the lessons that we need to learn because the next time around, you're like, well, maybe I need to know my audience a little bit better and if they're the kind of person that needs to be pushed or not. So, you know, there's a lot of really great quotes that I can't think of right now, but like you'll grow the most learning through the failures and the things that, you know, you wish didn't happen, but you're like, wow, I really learned a lot from it. But I want to get back, you know, that dopamine hit, Steve, you were talking about. I grew up in the pizza business. My dad so I'm first generation Italian on my dad's side. He had a pizzeria in Princeton for decades, still in the food business, but he's not doing that. But my experience as a kid, being in that pizzeria and the register would ring, boom, boom, slice, soda, sandwich, like the lines out the door. I mean, I love that, right? How many thousands of customers can you serve in a week or a month or a year, whatever the case is? If I do 50 transactions, if I do one a week and I take a 2-week vacation, that's high volume. And more often than not, I'm going to go 4 or 6 weeks without having one. Then I'm going to have, 4 or 5. I closed 15 last month, which is incredibly high volume. But again, that's because everything is taking longer. So all these deals started at the end of last year, the beginning of this year. They all just kind of came together at the same time. But yeah, man, you got to find the little victories every single day to remind yourself today was worth it. And I'm getting closer to a closed deal and getting that dopamine hit. So I'm a big numbers guy. And my 2 brothers work for Northwestern Mutual. My younger brother is a financial planner. My older brother is a managing partner in Milwaukee now. He's got their office in downtown. And early on, they said, hey, listen, this is what we do. Every 10 calls we make, we know we're going to book 3 meetings. And out of those 3 meetings, one of them is going to stay, right? The other 2 are going to cancel. That's just an industry-wide metric that they use, and they run their whole business off of that. And I went, oh, well, I want to know what my business is. And so I set out to track every single cold call that I made, every single meeting that I booked, and every single dollar that I made from those cold calls. And I found a way to monetize it internally to be like, you know something, today I made 20 calls and nobody picked up the phone. But guess what? There's actually value to that because I took the number of the amount of money I made and the calls where nobody picked up and I applied a value to it. So I know today I earned, without making it up, $5,000 in future revenue. That's how I sustained my business. That's how I stayed interested.
Yeah. But that same kind of ideology applies everywhere. And everybody wants that quick dopamine hit. Everybody wants that video to go viral. And we say, okay, you want a video to go viral? You're going to have to make 100 videos before you even have a shot at that happening. I mean, yes, one might pop off, number 35 might pop off. But if you're only doing one and you're expecting that to happen, it's never going to happen. And that translates everywhere. I mean, Max can speak to this. He makes so many cold calls, and I'm sure he has the same kind of ideology.
It's for me, it's every no is I'm just one step closer to that yes, right? So I know, like for me, when our pipeline is low, I know what I need to do. I need to literally pull out my phone and just make content. Like I just need to talk to the camera about what I'm actually doing because that's what people seem to care about. And then people will call me, and it's really interesting how that works. Because again, I don't think that I'm that interesting. I honestly don't. I don't even like to be on camera. I'm more of like
this handsome guy here. What are you talking about?
Stop it.
Come on.
This guy, right?
That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
No, but, it's one of those things where for me, I do need to step outside my comfort zone to get on screen and just talk and be vulnerable and be real and authentic. And I think that's what people can resonate with. Like, yeah, I could talk about all of our wins all the time, but like to your point, like there's so much shit that goes bad that like that's what people experience in their regular day. And so like they don't want to just see the polished stuff. And so, and you know, I know we've talked about this before. It's like, how do you be as authentic as possible? How do you be a thought leader in the industry or the space that you're in, but also be able to share the wins and share just the day to day? Because I personally believe that is how uh, that's how you're going to do more with more people. People want to work at the end of the day, and your business is everything. It's people. You're working with people.
Yeah.
And so how do you connect with them? How do you connect with them on their level? You want to be attainable to reach. You want to be accessible. You want like, and how do you do that? You just be real and raw. And so we have clients that have big marketing budgets, and you know, we'll do a big shoot, and you know, it's expensive to produce those kind of things. But at the same time, I'm like, at behind those big cameras, get out the phone and let's do some behind the scenes, because more people actually care about that stuff than the overproduced commercial. And so it's super interesting, you know, when you say that, like how you kind of reverse engineer your process and how many calls you need to make, putting a value to that. That is business. And if you can put your mindset there and do that, you will succeed, because you know what you need to do every day. You can prioritize your day to make sure that you are hitting that $5,000 in future earnings, right? And I think a lot of people don't know how to do that, and that's okay. But when you do know how to do that, yeah, you're going to have tough days, but at the same time, you know what to expect. It's more predictable.
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand that even as a salesperson, you have a business just like that the pizzeria owner does, you know, and you've got margins in your business and you've got numbers that you need to hit. And nobody from the top down in this business is telling us, you know, here's what you need to do. That's just not the way this business is. And then no one's to blame, right? It's just kind of how it is. So I think for those of us that have been successful, there's not one right or wrong way of doing this. I found a right way that worked for me. And I knew that numbers made a lot of sense. I was a collegiate athlete. I threw shot put and discus in school. I was really big into setting goals and hitting milestones and being like, how do I get to that next tranche? How do I hit that next distance? And oftentimes it was just inch by inch, literal quarter of an inch. If I hit that quarter of an inch personal best, bam, that's all I needed, right? It was a little bit more, a little bit more. And I think, you know, they say, you know, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And if I set out to say, today I want to make $100,000 in future earnings, it can happen, but chances are it's not going to. And you just need to take it one bite at a time. But I think, you know, when you were speaking, Max, it got me thinking about some things. When I come up on my anniversary of being in the business every year, I start to think about the things that I think have made me successful, if I can say that about myself. And I got to think of like, what are the ABCs? And then I went ABC. Okay, let's find a good acronym for this. And authenticity was an easy A. Bravery was my B, and compassion was my C. And I think coming into this business as a 22-year-old, even now as a 37-year-old, the people that I'm working with are still much older than I am. People that are in a decision-making capacity, CEOs, CFOs, even owners of buildings. I'm starting to graduate up where they feel like they're more my peers than anything. But like, how the hell do you establish that, you know, relationship with a 60-year-old CEO who's looking at you like some snot-nosed kid?
Right.
And I think it's those ABCs that get you there, because if you can just be authentic, right? Just if you see me outside of business, this is who you find. I see people and I'm like, this person here, who are you trying to be? I can totally tell this is not you. Just be who you are, and I think that'll shine through. Because even as I'm making my call, I have somebody in the office who's younger, and we talk a lot about these things. And I say, when you make your calls, don't try to be the polished, hi, this is Vinny DiMeglio from J. Just speak. Just be you, because it'll sound a lot smoother and authentic if you're you. That bravery, again, there's so much junk that happens in this business. And there's a lot of being scared. I don't want to call that 60-year-old CEO. I went to his LinkedIn or her LinkedIn, and they went to Harvard. They're so much smarter than I am. Hey, listen, you're transacting real estate deals every day. They are not. Okay. they may have a better degree than you, but you know way more about real estate than they do. So put your brave face on and go make that call. And then the compassionate part of it is, look, there's so many people I told you before that are involved in these deals. And oftentimes I'm like pissed to the nines that somebody on the other side is screwing it up. But you know what? I try to take that compassion because I don't know what's going on with them. I don't know what they're dealing with. I don't know if they have any idea how this process works. So it's trying to educate them. Maybe how we said it earlier, like educate them up, and just be like, instead of me ranting and raving and yelling at you because I don't like what you're doing, I'll just teach you and I'll explain it. And oftentimes it tends to work out because they're like, oh, I didn't really understand that before. So those are my ABCs. And I think that's how you make those connections.
I think those ABCs are phenomenal. One, two, I think anytime that you hear ABCs in sales, no one would ever think that as your acronym. So I think, I don't know. I just time stamped at 44 minutes. Like, this is a perfect piece of content for you, for thought leadership, for mentorship, for the opportunity for you to show that you know your shit, but also are compassionate and the ability to connect on a lot of different levels. Because when you're talking about bravery, like, my thought is these 60-year-old entrepreneurs, business owners, like, they have risk. They took the leap, at some point in their life. So, like, if you being authentic and showing that bravery, that will connect with them because they've already done that, right? And then being compassionate to their team and it's just like, it really kind of intertwines really well with what you're doing and how you're going about trying to bring on leads or just have conversations. Because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Is you need to get someone on the phone, and then once you're good enough that once you can get them on the line, you can speak what they need to hear. And so I think it's really cool. And I don't think most people would ever think ABC in real estate sales would think those that acronym. So I love that, dude.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
From a marketing perspective, that's actually from a social media perspective, that's a nice plant and pivot.
Oh.
Like, you say the ABC and people's like, oh, always be closing. And you're like, nope, authenticity, bravery, and compassion.
Well, it's funny, as I was like thinking, like, some of the highlights that I'm going to put, like, that's literally like what I'm doing to promote this episode. Like, it's perfect.
I actually totally didn't even make the connection to always be closing. That's an obvious one. Coffees for closers. Like, I totally get it, but I think, like, there are people that poo-poo self-learning, like, buying a book. Like, reading is so valuable. And it's something that around the time I was turning 30, I said, I really want to start diving into books. And I was just like going through my head yesterday, and things that I knew popped up, and I was like, how the hell do I know these things? And I went, books. I learned all these things in books. You can learn so much. You become more interesting, but you also have more anecdotal things to point to. And too many people poo-poo that stuff. Like, you might think it's funny that I've got the my ABCs, but it really helps invigorate me and brings out my passion, especially on the days where I think we all have these where I just want to give up.
Yeah.
Josh, it sucks, man. What the hell? Nobody's picking up the phone. Every deal is dying. My payments are late. What am I doing? Right?
It's never not hard.
I think you hit your stride a lot of times, to on a business level, to get personal. I had as I was learning and growing in the business from 09 to 19, basically every year was better. I had one dip, and it was two deals that fell apart, unfortunately, totally unrelated. That gave me a dip in that year, but whatever, that's going to happen. And then, we got into 19, I joined JLL, and there's going to be some natural attrition based off of moving firms. And then COVID hit, and like, you forget, don't even think about the money you booked in 2020 because it was 2020, right? So then I gradually started to ramp back up, and 2022 was my best year of my entire career. I'm like, I finally made it. I'm consistent again. 23 sucked. It sucked, and it was such a humbling experience because I think I got to this point where I was really busy transacting, and I forgot a little bit about the prospecting. And I tied into COVID a bit because it was like,
Yeah.
no one's in the office. Like, I can't really call them, and people are working from home. So if I go knock on the door, is anybody even there? I didn't really know. And so that's why, like, you can have those humbling experiences that remind you that you just need to keep grinding. And then you have the moments where you refine the passion. And the passion for me is not really ever in finding a piece of business, getting them to work with me, closing the deal, or getting paid. The passion is this. And that's a shit that I love, right? The fact that you guys really love the ABCs, I'm going to share one more with you. Probably around the time of my 10-year anniversary, I came up with my 4 pillars for this business. I may screw it up. I may make up a P on the fly, but um, it was professionalism, persistence, phoning, and one more that I have now since forgotten. I have remembered it yesterday because I was thinking about the call and maybe wanting to share it. But for me, I visualized 4 pillars in my head that held up a business that I would be proud of. Like, I was able to visualize, and I said, "Now, how the hell did I get there?" And I made these 4 P's: persistence, professionalism, phoning.
Something.
I'm pretending, because I'm pretending like I know what the hell I'm talking about right now. I'm going to get it to you, by the way. I'm going to tell you what that 4th one was, because it was really meaningful to me. Because if we go on in our days every single day, um, finding our self-worth in our business simply by the number of clients that we have and by the revenue that we're booking, I think we're all going to just sort of be a little bit sad, right? Instead, let's find that compassion, that just that braveness, that authenticity of just finding areas of this work that we really love and that we can really sink our teeth into. And that's where it becomes fun, because otherwise it's not fun.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably very similar in that aspect. I mean, we love small, medium-sized businesses. We know that we can truly help them, right? Like, yes, do we want the huge budgets of big business? Yeah, we want those too, and we can do some great work. But like, when you're a small to medium-sized, but you don't know what you don't know, and we love being able to come in and assist and really make an impact for them and their business and their employees and their culture. I mean, like, there's a lot of things that we, do now. We're not just a marketing agency. We are, but we help with operations, we help with culture, we help with sales, we help, just because we have that experience and we want to be able to kind of create that alignment for our clients, because when you have that alignment, the business is going to run better and you're going to see more success and more growth that way. So
Yeah.
totally understand. I think it's, yeah, we have our goals of numbers as well, but we also want to help people and help businesses. And, for us, that's what gets us super excited every day.
You gotta find that level of excitement in the things that you love, right? I mean, I'm kind of beating a dead horse now, but I feel like if you don't do that, it becomes a little bit just draining. And when you have a deal fall apart and something that you've been working on for a year, sometimes you have to go. You got to go away for a minute,
Yeah.
right? You just got to take a day. I mean, I had something happen once, and I was like, I'm just gonna go see a movie. Like, it was like the middle of the day. It was probably like 1 o'clock on a Wednesday, and I was like, I'm no good here. Like, I'm literally not going to be any good to myself, to my peers, and to my clients, because I'm just not right in the right headspace. And I think we're fortunately at a time in the world where it's becoming more accepted to not only have that thought, but to vocalize it to people, to say, hey, I'm not okay right now. I got to get off site for a while. My role as a broker allows me to do that, because I can come and go as I please. Nobody asks where I'm going. I don't have to report to anybody. So I totally understand not everybody has that luxury. But I would love to see more and more companies implement these like mental health suites, wellness rooms within their spaces, because you don't just have to be in sales to feel this way, right? Anybody that's doing anything for any organization has these moments where they've totally lost their way, and they just need a space to just go and chill out for a few minutes. And we should find some acceptance in that for everybody.
Yeah. It's just these glorified burnout bunkers, just so burnt out.
Listen, I have some early on thinking that has come to fruition in some ways. And when I was with my first firm, which was between 2009 2013, I turned to this guy and I said, Google was a thing at the time. Everybody wanted Google type space. what did that mean? Usually it meant like glass conference rooms and like nice flooring.
Foosball.
Yeah, exactly. Foosball, whatever. So I said, hey man, when you were in school as a kid and you maybe weren't feeling well, where did you go? What did you do? Went to the nurse's office. I'm like, the nurse's office. We should have nurse offices. You're not feeling so great. You just need to chill out for a few minutes. Go to the nurse's office, call it what you want, brand it what you want, but like really that's what it is at the end of the day. He laughed at me. He's like that, like basically don't ever admit to anybody that you said that. Like that's how he felt about the idea. And now we see, I mean, mothers' rooms have always, been a critical component for a lot of spaces, but wellness rooms, being able to put the shades down, recline in the chair, put on some music, like that's something that I hope more and more companies integrate because, if you're going to accept the fact that these jobs can be really hard and you want your people to perform at a peak, level, give them the opportunity to recover.
Even like walk-in clinics. I'm seeing walk-in clinics kind of go into some of these spaces where you don't need to schedule a doctor's appointment. Like you can literally go if you're not feeling well or something like that. I mean, like that would be, I don't know. I'm just kind of talking right now, but I know.
We should cut the video about 5 minutes ago, just for whatever it's worth.
Well, with that in mind, so we usually end these things with 2 questions, and I think you kind of touched upon it. The first one was about self-education and ongoing education. Max and I are big readers. I'm more of an audiobook listener, but like I'll plow through books all year long. On long rides, on mowing the grass, whatever that is, I just plow through books. What are you doing? What are you reading? Do you keep yourself educated? I mean, you had mentioned some books you do read on a regular basis. What are you reading right now to better yourself?
The title I'm going to forget, but it's the maybe like the power of the 5 a.m. club. It's a phenomenal book because I don't know how you're going to the 5 a.m. club by Raman Sharma. It's a story. You have characters. You have like fictional characters with a nonfiction sort of learning model about the benefits of waking up at 5 a.m. But it's told through the story of these people who aren't even real. It's a really cool way of implementing this advice rather than just being like, here's my book, here's what you should do, now go do it. Mm-hmm. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend that. I listen to podcasts. So I love reading books, flipping through pages, love reading books, building my library. Podcasts, I mean, I listen to anything and everything from the things that don't really matter to the things that do matter. Gary Brecka he's a health advocate essentially. Yep. I find the power in what he's teaching me to make me just a healthier person overall, which I think is important because it's not just about business. Like that's going to make me better in my business. It's going to make me a better husband. It's going to make me a better father. I really, really love listening to what he has to say. But then also, like I've been asked this question before. The one that's gotten me the most are biographies. I love learning about the people who have been there and done that. And not that I would ever dream to aspire to be these people, but Abe Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, Walt Disney, Steve Jobs. Walter Isaacson has written a bunch of those biographies. I would go read them all. And they're long books. They're 500-600 pages, but man, they're so worth it. And you learn not only about a lot of your own, American history through some of these people, but just like, God, if they could get through what they got through,
yeah,
I can pick up the phone and make a cold call. I really can.
Yeah, no, it's true.
All right, so that was question 1.
Yep. So that's a good point. I actually just download that book so I can listen to it
as we were talking.
Yeah.
Okay,
just speed read through it 10 times.
Okay.
And then the last one is kind of unconventional, and it's kind of born out of my interests when I was growing up. And I was always, before like the whole like talking heads out on social media were like, hey, find someone above you who you can learn from and learn from them, that kind of thing. I was always interested in like how people got to where they are, and if they thought that at age 12, do you think age 37 Vinny would be doing what he's doing today? Like, do you think that you'd be doing what you're doing today at 12 years old?
No, I never even knew what the hell commercial real estate was. Even
what did you want to do?
You know what, man? This is not something I'm necessarily private about, but I've never shared it in the professional setting. I had a really, really tough time as a kid learning. I got good grades, but I had an IEP. So you had the extra teacher in the room for you. And, I had to take algebra over 2 years just because that was the model. They were like, we've identified you as somebody who we need to slow down. And I sort of determined for myself when I got to high school that didn't really work for me. I wanted to be on everybody else's level, and I started to accelerate from there. And I mean, I went to Ursinus College. I graduated. I made Dean's List a bunch, and I was sort of had to remind myself that I was really capable of a whole lot. So at 12, I mean, God, 12-year-old boy, what a weird time, right? Like what a weird time to be thinking about these things. And I remember somebody gave me like an aptitude test at that age, and like graphic designer came up. I was like, graphic designer, that seems what the hell? And in my more adult life, when I've come to learn, like, I have this love for creative things. I play the guitar, played more so than play. I used to draw a lot, like, and I wonder to myself, like, maybe that was like closer to reality than I ever really gave it credit for. And if I had to go back to my 12-year-old self to make any changes, I would probably just explore more of those things, more of the creative side. Talking about Disney, like, these Imagineers, they are incredibly gifted. They are so smart. Imagine getting to go to work every day, flexing those creative muscles and being like, absolutely nothing is out of bounds. Like, whatever you can dream of, go do it, right? And maybe that's like a good way to wrap it up here, because I don't ever want to make people think if you're not an Imagineer, you can't dream something up and do it. I think even in my business, the thing that's going to set aside the people that have the longevity are the people that can think outside the box, come up with the creative ideas, and just have, like, I know I've used the word bravery, but like the guts to go implement it, right? Because again, no one's feeding us the material. No one's telling us what to say. No one's saying this is the secret sauce to how you make it work. You gotta figure it out on your own. But like, just go freaking do it. And you might fail, but you'll learn a lot. So
I love that. And as you're saying it, like, especially in someone in your position, like, you can go and be creative and you are, right? You're creative in structuring deals and having conversations, but like, you could go further realistically if you wanted or had the ability to. And so I think it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And I think we were right. This definitely could have been a Rogan 3-4 hour conversation. This is our longest conversation so far. And I feel like we haven't even like touched, much, but honestly, like, this was awesome. I really appreciate your time again. Like, I know, we've go back a few years, and, I wish I had more opportunity to even work with you on a more regular basis, but, as always, like, if there's anything, we can help with, I can help with, obviously we're here for you. I love seeing your content when you do put it out there. So, I'll continue to tell you more. Let's
appreciate you, Vin. Thank you for being part of the podcast.
Thanks so much for listening. Feel free to reach out to us for all things marketing at attentiontrading.com.